just say we're waiting on him. We good? Mm-hmm. Good afternoon, City Council. I appreciate everybody taking time to be a part of today's work session. We are still missing one council member, but we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully Stephen will join us very soon. Today we are to have a discussion about the future city manager of the city of Auburn. Our discussion today will constitute whether we will go forward with an internal candidate or execute an outside search. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it will be the goal for this city council to direct myself and city manager Jim Buston about the pathway and the direction that we will take as we move forward with choosing Auburn's next city manager. I'll begin our meeting by making a couple of comments. The city manager's position is one of the most important positions in the city of Auburn. And today we begin a search for that person who will be the next city manager of Auburn. It's my belief that that person needs to be someone who is a hard worker, who has experience in the arena of municipal government and has played multiple roles in that arena, who can communicate with all peoples in the community, whether they're university leadership, city leadership, parents, employees, or us, the elected officials. The city of Auburn needs someone who values customer service, who knows how to fix problems, who knows how to talk to people that are upset and are seeking a better way to get things done. We need somebody who believes in their staff and who wants their staff to improve and get better and fulfill their ultimate destiny within their job. The city of Auburn needs someone who appreciates the tax dollars that we have been given as an entity on behalf of the citizens of this town and will responsibly execute the roles that those tax dollars fulfill. And it will be conservative and help us to spend our money wisely and appropriately on behalf of all those people that live here in Auburn. The next city manager needs to be smart, needs to be academically qualified, and to have all the degrees and all the certifications that show that they are ready for this job and to make the kind of decisions that they have to make in a progressive college community. Our next city manager needs to be confident and intelligent, but to have a great sense of humor and appreciates laughter when it's appropriate. The next city manager needs to serve the council with wisdom and counsel because we need their advice. We need the next city manager to show us the best way to go, to challenge us on our decisions and to offer us the best advice possible to make the best decisions on behalf of our citizens. And hopefully the next city manager will understand the unique qualities that make Auburn a special place all of the time and a challenging place to live and serve some of the time. So today we are trying to choose a pathway of moving ahead with an internal candidate or conducting an outside search. And I submit to you that the answer is right before us. We have an internal candidate that has a great career path that shows that this candidate is prepared and ready to be the next city manager in Auburn. This candidate has started their career as an intern, as they were working on a master's degree at Auburn University, and became a part of our planning staff, and then moved to economic development, and then moved up to deputy economic development director, and then moved as the city of Auburn reorganized itself as the executive director of development services, and today is the assistant city manager and the chief operating officer. That candidate has references that show and display the broad appeal that this candidate has to many leaders in our community and frankly across our state. As you look at the references that include nonprofits, industry leaders, business leaders in our community, university leaders in our community, and a statewide economic development leader in our community. This candidate has been endorsed by the 3 former mayors who constitute 46 years of leadership out of the last 50 years in the city of Auburn. So today, as we talk, and to be as transparent as possible, I'll offer to you that this is one of the most important decisions that we will make as selected leaders in the city of Auburn. but the choice is obvious. The choice is right here before us, and it's my belief that that choice is Megan McGowan Crouch. At this time, we'll open it up to anyone else on the City Council who would like to ask questions or make comments.
Okay, I would.
Go ahead, Connie, you're up. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I listen at what you're saying, and I don't want anyone to take this personal or anything. But when we're talking about internally, and I just want this to be explained, when we're talking about internal candidates, I was looking at this packet that Jim sent over, and on it, it speaks about internal candidates, and it says, and I'm gonna read this. It says one or more internal candidates may apply, but the City Council is committed to a fair process where no one starts with an advantage. Okay, so in saying that, and just like I said, I don't want anyone to take this personal, but were there other candidates that actually applied for this position internally, or are we just, as a council and as the mayor, are you just appointing due to the qualifications of one candidate, or were there an opportunity for others to apply so that they would at least have the opportunity to apply and maybe be interviewed as the candidate that you have chosen?
Sure.
If my questions stand correct, and you understand, and I just want to see, was that opportunity offered to everyone else internally?
I'm gonna let Jim take the lead on the first part answering this question, and if we don't get it answered to you just let us know if you've got continued things you'd like to ask us. But Jim, I'll go ahead and let you take a stab at this.
So from my perspective of a hiring manager, and Connie, you and I talked about this, I am the one that has to look at the pool of candidates when I hire someone. And I have to make a determination based on what I know about those candidates, having worked with them, or those employees, and having worked with them, if they would be a fit for the position that is open. And you and I talked, and I told you that there are certain times when I have just appointed someone to be a department head because they are the most qualified, at least in my evaluation, and it's my job to do that. And there have been other times when I felt that we needed to we have more than one internal candidate that is qualified, and so we need to then allow all those candidates to put their hat in the ring, and then I would pick based on an interview or something like that. And there have been times when we are grooming a candidate for the position, especially when it comes to an assistant department head going into the department head position. And I mentioned to you a couple of those that I recently appointed directly. They were assistants to the manager, and the manager left, and I just went ahead and appointed them because they had already shown to me that they were qualified for the position, had done their due diligence, and were the best, in my estimation, the best candidate for the position. So, I don't know.
Sure. Connie, do you have any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up for that. And Jim, thanks for that, for explaining that to me. But that was a conversation between me and you. So I just wanted, everybody else to hear that the conversation was, was present at the time. But, by us being on a Zoom call today, I just wanted everybody else to hear the same explanation.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you doing that, Connie. And look, from my perspective, I I have a lot of belief in our employees here at the city of Auburn, and I believe that there are people that are currently working at the city of Auburn who could be a city manager in the future. There's no question in my mind. I believe also there'll be people here at the city of Auburn who'll have new opportunities under Megan's leadership to even demonstrate their abilities in the near future as well. So I'm excited about the pipeline of people that are currently working here at the city of Auburn. And I firmly believe that there's a city manager that's already here working for the city of Auburn and Auburn's future. I really believe that.
Hey, Mayor.
Yes, Brett.
I want to kind of bounce off Connie's question too, and I think if Jim will kind of answer, there's kind of a difference here. I know there's employment law and considerations, especially for filling positions Jim was talking about, and requiring advertising and who can apply and how we consider those applications. Jim, what's the difference between our job in appointing or determining a city manager compared to your job as the city manager when you're looking to hire department heads, maybe from a legal perspective, kind of the boundaries that we have in those choices, if there is a difference?
Yeah, I think the boundary is you have to be fair, and you have to be, your selection needs to be on merit, not on personal, not because they're a relative or because they're
Right.
they're a friend or something like that. You hire based on merit. You are where it differs from me in my hiring, and you are a group of 9 people that are picking the only employee of the city of Auburn that is contractual, that you are hiring them based on a group of 9, as opposed to me on an individual person. By law, every single employee of the city of Auburn has to be approved by me. I have to sign off on every hire that we do at any level in the organization. And there comes with that, again, our HR director is on line here, and we can turn it over to her to talk about the legalities of what have to be done there. But you are different in that there's no requirement that you go outside. There's no requirement that you don't. It's basically what the 9 of you as a group, and then it's a consensus determination, what the 9 of you as a group decide you want to do and who you want to have that person that reports to you be. And
is it fair to say that, and I know like if you look at advertisements with the university, and I know in other public arenas, there's a notice period, and you have to publicly notice the opening and different requirements like that. Are we under those same boundaries? I'm kind of not necessarily like the constitutional arguments of equal opportunity, and I'm talking more of like the limitations of a public position that requires notice. I mean, do we have those requirements?
you are not bound by any of those, no.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brett. Next.
Mr. Mayor, Kelly.
Yes, go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Connie's question as well. We didn't
Sure.
get an answer from Jim on our question. We had a good explanation of things, and I appreciate that. But the question was, had anyone else applied? And obviously, since there's no announcement put out, there wasn't anything for them to apply to. So I don't think we got an answer to that question. But has it been made widely known that we would entertain other candidates from within the city?
Mr. Buston, I'll let you answer that.
The answer to both of your questions, I would assume, if I understand the question, is no and no. I mean, we have not put this out as a opening anywhere except to the city council to make a determination as if they want to hire who I believe is the most qualified, only qualified candidate that I know of internally. And, or if you want to then open it up, not only just internally, but internally and externally to find someone else.
Okay, thank you. That answered that question. The other thing with one of the things you sent us was a document showing the qualifications for the city manager. Is that documented anywhere? Did you write that from scratch or what?
The qualifications were gleaned from the pamphlet that was developed in 2017 that I also sent you. When we went out on a national search, we had we hired a company to do the national search. They developed a brochure. Those qualifications, if you go to the qualifications section of that brochure, I parsed those out of that brochure.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll take
Yeah.
a go.
Got it, Bob.
Thank you. Jim, does there exist in human resources a job description of the city manager, or is that what you just described now the only document?
The job description basically is my contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have I guess, a comment to make.
Sure.
During this whole time, and obviously I'm a new kid on the block. This is a first for me to be tasked with such a responsibility as this. I was under the impression that this meeting would be the first moment for us to discuss direction in general. And having said that, many of you will be aware that I declined to meet with Megan, as was offered a couple of weeks ago prior to this meeting. And I did so not out of any estimations of shortcomings on her candidacy or her qualifications. I quite like Megan. I think she's an excellent candidate, and she would make an excellent city manager. I declined because it seemed to me that the cart was before the horse, and that I wanted to make sure that in the interests of democracy, should this council take a different direction insofar as opening it out for a larger search, that I was being fair to any candidate who may arrive, including Ms. McGowan Crouch. So I just wanted to make that distinction that if anything, that's I'm very comfortable with the idea of Ms. McGowan Crouch as our city manager, but if anything, I'm a little bothered by the process, by how we've gotten here, because it's clearly evident that the general direction through both the recommendations of previous mayors, the city manager, and our current mayor, that she is a good fit, and I'm confident, based on your many years of experience with her, that your estimations are sound and reliable and trustworthy. It just seemed to me that I needed to make it clear that my declining to meet with this candidate had nothing at all to do with her ability to do the job or any kind of lack of confidence that I have in her. I just, I think if you know me, you've known that I ran to, in the interest of transparency, and for those citizens in Auburn who may not be familiar with the caliber of candidate that Ms. McGowan Crouch, is I'm fearful that an internal hire without any other applicants has an optics that could make the public cynical about how we've arrived there. And I think that's worth thinking about. But in this case, in this particular case, having worked and sought counsel from Ms. McGowan Crouch on a number of occasions, she's been nothing but excellent. And I just wanted to make that point about the larger optics of what we're doing. And I'm very thankful that this moment is being streamed, so the public does have an opportunity to hear the confidence in that we do have in this candidate. And I think I can speak collectively for this council. My impression of everybody is very supportive of her.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate your sincerity and your comments. I'll just speak for myself. I believe I owe it to the community to share with them exactly my perspective of this situation. And so that's what I've done to start this meeting off as the mayor, is shared my perspective of this situation. And I believe with my whole heart that the very best candidate that we could ever look for is right here among us. And to go through a process to me is not in the best interest of our community, because the best person who's got the best set of experiences, the best personal qualities, the best professional qualities is right here as we speak today, and is Megan. And so that's why I boldly made the comments that I made to begin with. And I felt like it was important for me to get that out there and let everybody know, and not to be sheepish about that, but to be sincere and honest about it. But I appreciate what you're coming from, Bob. Next.
Well, let me
Mayor,
just say,
a few more questions.
I'm not sure who was that. Brett, was that you, Brett, wanting to say something?
It is. I've already said something. So if somebody else wants to say something, I've got a few more questions and a couple statement. I can hold off if there's some other questions. Okay.
Well, you can go ahead, Brett. You go right ahead. We don't have an agenda. We're just here to discuss and communicate. So you're up.
Thank you, sir. And Mayor, thank you for putting forward the recommendation of Megan Crouch, and I'll get into my conversation with her. We had a great conversation. A couple questions for Jim, as being I believe the most experienced in the position that we're looking to fill as the current city manager. Jim, in your experience and in your opinion on two issues that are important to me, how important in selecting a city manager is it someone that's kind of that's worked in that city, that lives in the city, that's got experience here in the city? How important is that? And two, how important to you, in us looking to fill this role, is it someone that's been in an assistant city manager position? Are those two qualities that are important when we look to making a determination on a new city manager?
So from my perspective, it is imperative that a successful city manager have a relationship with the community. It's a new city manager coming into a new community. The first couple of years of that position is filled mostly with trying to learn the community, trying to understand what different factions in the community are passionate about, trying to get a handle on where different people that you interact with, where they fit in the community, and that's generally no matter which community you go into. In our particular community, and specifically, I believe that it's imperative, because of the uniqueness of this community, its unique relationship with the university, its culture that has been developed from the days when Dr. Doug Watson came on as city manager here, someone that is internal is by far and away someone who knows the organization, who knows the community, who knows the players, is far and away going to be more successful, bar none, than someone coming from the outside, specifically to this community, because honestly, having spoken with city managers that have been here and have gone other places, I can tell you that this is not a community that you can just sit back on your laurels and things just take care of themselves. This is a very demanding community. They demand perfection and will settle for be great, but it's other communities are not so particular, and so it's very imperative that a person understand what's going on in the community, who's who, what those relationships are that have already been developed with, like I said, the university, industry, commercial, those type of things. So I think it is very important. It's a very important consideration. I also think that if you decided to go to the outside, and if the outside candidates understood that you had a strong internal candidate, they would be less likely to apply, because once again, nobody wants to put themselves out to a position if they don't believe they have a good chance of getting that position, especially in a city manager role. Most of the things that go on in a city manager search, and the reason why it's usually done by a headhunting firm, is because it's done in private, because those people that are applying do not want to have their name out there until there's a good chance that they're going to be seriously considered for the position. So I do believe having someone on the inside with the credentials of Megan, and I would not have given her my recommendation if I didn't think so, but I think someone with her credentials is someone that it would have to be that type of person or better to come into this community.
Thank you. Now, when we're looking at, talking about internal, because I agree with you. I think an internal candidate is always going to be best because they've got experiences and are aware of, you take a higher risk when you look externally, but just on the unknowns compared to a kind of a track record of success, and you've seen their work ethic. Now, comparatively to Megan's current position as assistant city manager, if you're looking at other candidates maybe as department heads, do you think there's experiences that Megan has been through as the assistant city manager that may benefit her in a city manager position over maybe an individual department head? I think all our department heads are fantastic, but is there a difference between a department head compared to the assistant city manager?
Being an assistant city manager, you're basically taking over for the city manager, the duties of the city manager when the city manager is incapable of fulfilling those duties. But you also work very closely with the city manager at all times, so you kind of get a feel of what the city manager job is all about. As a department head, you don't get that same interaction with the city manager on a kind of a peer level. You get it more on a boss to employee level. So I do think that having time as an assistant city manager is extremely helpful and is extremely beneficial if you are looking to be to acquire the position of city manager.
And if I remember correctly, you appointed or you selected Megan as the assistant city manager. Is that right? I
did. That is correct.
And there were expectations when you did that based on the quality of work you had seen, her resume, similar to things we're talking about today. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And with the time she's been in that position, I mean, would you give her high marks? I mean, do you consider she's a great asset for our city? I mean, does she meet all the expectations you had for when you appointed her that position?
She does. And as I said, I would not have recommended her to you if I didn't believe that she was the best person for the job. But yes, That is correct.
And I agree with you. And I just want to briefly make comments on and Mayor, you recommended I speak with Ms. Crouch, and it was a great opportunity. I think that was a great idea. We had a fantastic conversation, and I really appreciate her taking the time out of her busy day to answer a bunch of different questions. We talked on all kinds of different subjects and her thoughts and what she thought about today and what she thought about tomorrow for Auburn and kind of her background and experience. I mean, what a breadth of experience coming into that potential position if we select her. I very well qualified. Even before that opportunity, I've witnessed Megan in her profession with different things, dealing with council and other meetings, and I've always admired her for her professionalism and just a lot of fact-based presentation. I've appreciated that as well, and really as it seems to be, always prepared for a multitude of different subjects at a multitude of different times, whether that was on the fly needing information or whether that was we had planned meetings into the future. It always seems she's very, very prepared and very willing to answer as many questions as needed. I really appreciated that conversation. I fully support her consideration based on the fact that she has experience. She's been with Auburn. She's done a substantial amount of work. She's very well qualified. And as an aside, and it has nothing to do necessarily with her credentials, but I think would she be the first, if we were to select her, she'd be the first female city manager we'd have in Auburn?
That is correct.
And that was something I said to her and wanted her to know that it has nothing to do with her being a woman or a male or anything of that nature. You can see based on the amount of work that she's put in, but I imagine for my daughters and for a lot of people, a lot of other girls out there in our community, they can see it, if she's selected for that position, that you work hard, you put in the hard work, you get the job done, and the sky is the limit. I think that's something that is something that would be remarkable for our town. And I think I think she's an inspiration for other folks out there wanting to be the best that they can. And so Mayor, I appreciate the recommendation. I appreciate you recommending me talking with her, and I appreciate her taking the time to talk. It was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Brett. Connie, I think you were wanting to say something just a second ago as well.
I did. I just want to sort of close out since I started it, I just want to close it out. And I got a couple of things. And just like I said, I want to go back to say that the question that I asked, it has nothing, it's not anything personal. I also met with Megan, and then we had a great conversation. And I feel like she's, she's pretty much qualified for the position, even, as a city manager. She was always Johnny on the spot. She's got answers. If not, then, she can get them pretty quickly. Okay. And in saying all of that, I listened at the ones who have spoken, and also you, Mayor, some of the and the accolades that we've all given her. But it still goes back to the fact, and I may be the only one thinking like this, but it still goes back to the fact that she may be the most qualified candidate in our minds, and because we've dealt with her on that level. But I just, out of fairness, I just feel like, even with everything being said, that there should still have been an opportunity for other people to at least apply. And maybe you may not get any other applications. You may get one or two applications, to at least out of fairness, to so that we could see that the qualifications and even some of the accolades and stuff, that we're being fair as a council to choose the correct person out of a pool of people that at least applied. If that's making any sense. And I just, the way I feel about it, and like I said, don't have anything personal to do with Megan as a person or as a leader, because the only thing that I'm hearing that's different in her qualification is that she was the assistant manager that maybe other people did not have the opportunity to be, because when you talk about community leaders from the department heads and stuff that I see, you know, all of them have been a team player. So the only advantage that she has over that, as far as qualifying, is the fact that she was the assistant city manager. So I would ask the council and the mayor and the city manager to at least consider taking in other applicants, just out of fairness.
Thank you, Connie.
And,
Jim, would you
and
have
maybe
any-
that process, you know, maybe it don't have to take long or whatever, but I would just feel more comfortable if we would at least internally now, I'm talking about externally. See if there are other applicants that, you know, may feel like they do qualify or they have the credentials or whatever. So that's today of this council.
You know, Connie, you went kind of in and out on me there at the end. I'm just making sure. You finished? Okay.
I just said that that's the question that I am asking of this council.
Okay. Mr. Busser, would you have any further follow-up with that? I know you basically answered that question earlier, but I didn't know if you had any further comments.
Just now, and not that this is necessarily relevant to this conversation, but I can share with you, and not that they would, but I can share with you that no one else, none of my other department heads have come to me since they are aware, since I've offered and when I sent my letter to y'all announcing my retirement, I first sent a notification to all of the department heads and to all of the staff in separate emails that I was retiring. And I can tell you that none of the department heads came to me and said that they were interested in my job or came to me and asked what the council might be considering or anything like that. So not that that is an indicator of interest or not, but I can just tell you that none of them did come to me.
Okay, and that's good for the record. So, you know, as long as, you know, this is an open session and everybody hears that, then, you know, and if everybody on the council want to move with that, knowing nobody else, you know, really was interested in applying, that's almost saying if we put it back out there, nobody's gonna apply. So it's, you know, that's on the record. So I'm good with that.
Jim, you offered your letter to the council on October 1st, correct?
Correct.
And what you're telling us today is that you informed the employees before that.
On the same October 1st.
On October 1st.
Before I sent the email to y'all.
So this has now been about 10 days, 10 calendar days, working on 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Who would be next?
Well, I was going to follow up, if I may.
Sure, Jay.
I appreciate the conversation. And sorry, just going to follow up, I guess, and kind of dovetail Connie's point, you know, in why we didn't or whether we should, you know, discuss it with other internal candidates. You know, I think it's a good point. I think they probably, a good point that Jim just made, you know, that he hasn't heard from anyone. But in all, you know, I don't know that with as much discussion as has been made that we'd see a lot of interest from anyone, you know, but that's fine. And I guess my reason, my, you know, in my heart, well, I don't have a problem with kind of the discussion we're having, you know, is that I see this as a promotion from, you know, a promotion, not necessarily an interview process. And as is with other department head positions, and as Jim described, early on in the in our meeting today, I can rest easy knowing that's just kind of the process we're going through. I think we've seen, was the previous city manager search, national search in 2017. Is that what you said earlier?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And I know we're not necessarily talking about an external search, but I mean, that was just 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And I believe there were, a list of top five that was presented to the council at that point. And, with all due respect, none of those five stood out enough to warrant, a decision made at that time. So I don't know what we're going to see, or if we would see anything different 2.5 years later if we were to go through that process. And so that's another reason why, some extensive external search doesn't really concern me. So for those two reasons, I'm okay, and I'm at peace with the way it's panning out with a promotion type situation. I think we've all discussed our comfort level with Megan, and so there's no need in trying to continue down that road. But as far as the process conversation, I see this as a promotion of a 20-year veteran of our city, and I wouldn't have any interest in an exterior search. Just my 2 cents.
Sure. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. Who would be next?
Mayor, if I may.
Sure, Beth.
I just would like to add to the conversation some of the things, not to be redundant, and some things that have already been stated, but I was on the council 3 years ago when we decided or we were required to look for a new city manager because the current city manager retired and entered his retirement. And there was a great conversation internally. It wasn't so much an external conversation until we kind of forced the issue that there probably was an internal candidate that met some of the qualifications. But the difference here is 3 years ago, there was an internal candidate that met some of the qualifications, but not all the qualifications. Therefore, a couple of council members pushed, and there was consensus, and a majority decided to move forward with an external search. And I will tell you, through that process, I learned a lot about the difference between a candidate who is seeking to come from outside versus a candidate that has been a part of this community and has met and exceeds some of the qualifications that we're seeking. We did not have a great pool of candidates, and one of the reasons why was because we were up against an election year. We're moving into an election year, and the difference now is we have a seated council that has a couple more years to go, but we are not an easy council. And so an external search would really, I think, produce the same outcome from those external variables. I also believe that this process has been transparent. From the beginning, the mayor has mentioned upon the letter of retirement that was submitted on October 1, that the process would begin. And there's been no secret made, and there's been no hiding the fact that some feel that an internal candidate would be the better path versus an external search. So when we speak about transparency, I think we have to be very careful about entering that term with falsehood, because there's nothing that has not been discussed publicly. The part of transparency is making sure that you're open to scrutiny. And I believe that we've been open to scrutiny along the way, especially over the last 2 years. And we've met that scrutiny with honest and fairness. And the difference when we talk about fairness in this capacity is it fair to request candidates to go through a process knowing that they were not going to be selected? That I don't consider that to be fair. And the most qualified, in my opinion, is our internal candidate, would be Megan. When you look at the qualifications, not only that they're put forth before us, there's over 25 characteristics in looking for the ideal city manager. She checks those boxes. She also checks what I call bonus boxes. Councilperson Smith alluded to that. I think having an internal candidate that checks the boxes, checks bonus boxes, has a limited learning curve, if any of a learning curve, has established relationships. One being the most important is an established relationship with our staff, who I believe our staff is one of our strongest assets, if not the strongest asset that we have in this community, outside of our everyday residents. So for me, going with an internal candidate that is known, qualified, maybe overqualified in some areas, has the exposure and the experience that is not only within the confines of the city limits of Auburn, but also a global reach, both international and nationally within our community. Her exposure and her experiences, I don't believe could be matched by too many more people within our staff walls at this point in time. So for those reasons, I think that is why the path forward with an internal candidate, a singular internal candidate, by which we're not bound by any rules or regulations to open it up to others, is the most judicious, the least futile, the most respectful of our process, and the most transparent, because here we are having the conversation open for anyone within our citizenry to listen and to understand. So from that perspective, I would support moving forward with the internal candidate process.
Thank you, Ms. Whitten. There's a couple of you we have not heard from yet, and I didn't know if you wanted to speak. There might be others who want to speak again, so I want to make sure we get everybody up the first time.
Yeah, I can speak briefly
Yeah,
on this. I don't think there's much more I can add to the conversation. I feel like everyone's voices have been heard, and I had a great conversation with Megan about a week ago or so. We talked for probably about 2 hours. I personally have no issue with Megan. I think she is an excellent candidate, and I would support moving forward with her.
Thank you, Stephen. Chief, you got your picture on, man. You up next?
Yes, sir, Mayor. If I may, I just want to say I fully support Megan for the next city manager. When you asked me to meet with Megan to get my thoughts on it, I talked to Megan over the phone, spoke with her, but I knew then I really didn't need to meet with Megan because I've been watching Megan for the last 20 years. And I know what she's capable of, know what she's done, and I know how much she means to this city. But more importantly, the reason I ran for city council, one was for the Citizens of Ward 8 to make sure everything was, their needs are met, but also that our city employees are well taken care of. So I did go out and do my homework and spoke with some employees, current and past employees, and they were all favorable for Megan. And I think that's the number one thing. I talked with some former department heads whom I have the utmost respect for, and their exact words was, the city couldn't do any better. So I think that goes a long way. And I put a lot of faith in what our current city manager says, that he thinks Megan is the most qualified. I have a unique perspective because I worked for the city for so long in law enforcement, and Megan's a big proponent for law enforcement, as well as the rest of the city employees. I think she'll do an excellent job. And I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't believe it. You all know me well enough to know if I thought she'd be horrible at the job, I'd say she's not ready for the job. She wouldn't be good at it. But I think she's the best candidate we could find. I worked for the city when we had an outside candidate come in and it didn't work out so well. And I certainly don't want to see that again. I think it's very important. I've also talked with some business people. I think it's very important that you get somebody that knows our community. Jim touched on this a little bit a while ago. You got to have somebody that knows the community and knows what they're dealing with. And it's a very, very unique community. It was always for our police officers, because you may have to go from dealing with a doctor in chemistry person to dealing with a blue collar worker at the same time. You got to be able to communicate with both, all walks of life. because our factory workers are just as important to us as our university elites are important to us. So you take somebody that can really relate to different people from different backgrounds. We have people from all over the world here in Auburn, and you got to have somebody who understands that and can work with them. She did an excellent job when she was in economic development. I was very impressed with her then. She's always, and one thing that really sold me on Megan, I had a meeting not too long ago with some of my constituents, and I asked Megan to come out to address their concerns. And one of them's exact words were, "You're the first one from the city that act like you really cared about what we want or what we need." So that really stuck with me. She has a unique way of communicating with people and comes across very well. And she comes across as caring because she does care. She wouldn't want to be city manager if she didn't care. And I think she's the best fit for our city. And I support her wholeheartedly. And I'm willing to work with her. And I hope the rest of the council will join in. I know they will, to work with her and get behind her. And she can do some wonderful things. And I think she's a great fit for Auburn. And I think she'll prove to be an asset to us 5 to 10 years. She's a young lady. So she's got a while to go, and I think she'll just continue to be an asset to the city. And I want to say I appreciate her interviewing for this job, and I appreciate her interest in it, and I think she'll do a fine job for us.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to talk again?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would.
Sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'd like to start off by saying that I think Megan is an outstanding candidate. I mean, super. But from my point of view, she's just that, a candidate. And I have to go back to some of my Army experience again. I know y'all are tired of hearing some of that. But the last couple positions I had, I supervised a predominantly civilian workforce in a project management capacity. And whenever we would have a vacancy, we were always required, and I realize we're not required at this point, but we were always required to announce the vacancy. And even though we may have somebody in there in an acting position, everyone had to compete for that job. They had to show up. If we interviewed one, we had to interview them all. So I'm kind of coming from that background where it was expected that no job would be simply handed to someone, or even if there was a promotion, they wouldn't be promoted into the job. They still had other people at that same rank or grade that would be considered for an open vacancy. So that's where I'm coming from. And it's certainly nothing against Megan. She's outstanding. She's fully qualified. But I want to make sure that the public understands that we are not just promoting from within, just like we don't normally select, committee and council or committee members and board members and whatnot from those. We have gotten to the habit now of not requiring incumbents to compete, which I think is a mistake. And I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I take some heat on that on social media. But and I'm not saying I want an extensive and go spend a bunch of money like the previous search was. But I do believe that there are probably candidates out there, internal or external, that might be interested in the position. Now, we talked about nobody has said, "Oh yeah, I want your job, Jim." Well, there's been no incentive for anybody to come up and say that, because it's been very public that basically we have an executive fiat that we've already selected, a replacement. They don't have any incentive to apply if we've already made and basically announced some of the decision makers' preferences publicly. I do have the highest confidence in Christian Reeder and her HR staff. I believe we could figure out a way to do a limited search without spending $25K like we did last time. There are lots of professional publications out there that people subscribe to that might have an interest in the position. We could state in the qualifications it had to be someone with experience in a college town, or we could make it as tough as we wanted to. But I mean, that's my take. I'm not convinced that there are not other candidates out there. Obviously, we ran off one good candidate with Kevin Cowper, when we extended Jim's contract. So, I mean, there are candidates out there, both some with Auburn experience, some with the university experience, some maybe within internally. But I'd be very uncomfortable moving forward without some type of a competitive aspect to this. And once again, this has nothing to do with my lack of confidence in Megan. I think she's a wonderful manager. She does a super job. I agree that she's Johnny on the spot anytime that I've needed something. And that's certainly nothing against her. But I believe the process itself is what we're going to be judged on, not just who we put in the position. So those are just my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Kelly. And I think all of our experiences that we've been a part of is what we bring to the table when we represent our community. So that's all very valid and very poignant. This is my perspective on competing and interviewing. Megan Crouch has been competing and interviewing for this time in her life for 23 years. She came here as a young college student, getting a master's, came over here and did an internship, and has intentionally, through hard work, smartness, treating people the right way, being a valuable employee, has worked her way to this day and time. She has been competing for this job. Every day she's come to work, she's been competing for this job. Anyone else?
Mayor, if I may.
Sure, Chief.
I can reflect back on a time when Charlie Duggan was the city manager, and he could have went out and searched for a police chief and probably found somebody that was a little shinier than the one he got. Probably found somebody that was had a few more credentials under the name than I had. But he didn't. He took a chance on me because I'm much like Megan, worked my way up through the organization. And I think the thing I had going for me and Megan has going for her, we care about the organization. It's just something about when you come up through the organization, you care more about it than when you come into the organization from outside. And, you know, I appreciate Charlie sticking in the house and taking a chance on me. And I worked hard every day to prove he made the right decision. And I will have to take one issue with what Councilman Griswold said, running Kevin Cowper off. If Kevin Cowper had been the right candidate for the situation, he would have stayed here and waited Jim retired. That shows that I cared enough about. I was a lot of times I felt like I got passed over for promotion, but I didn't quit and go somewhere else. I stayed there until my turn come around again. And Jim has done an excellent job, and I don't think we could have done any better than Jim Buston's done. I don't think we can do any better than having Megan McGowan as our next city manager. Thank you.
Chief. Anyone else? Okay. So procedurally, where we would go from here is I'm going to ask us to have some direction as to what we would initiate with the next move. As an addendum to what we would be doing, I told y'all that when this time would come that we would talk about how we would approve contracts in the future for the city manager. And so I've obviously put a lot of time and effort into thinking about this. And so I wanted to offer to you a simple resolution and for us to discuss that at this point in time. I believe there's always got to be a point person that's negotiating and discussing the sensitivities and the parameters and the specifics of an employment contract. And I believe that it's best in our form of government for the mayor to be the point person to do that. I am also on board for the whole city council to approve that contract in its totality so that it's not approved or signed by the mayor, none of that language. It would be negotiated by the mayor and approved by the city council. So there's not one thing about this contract that wouldn't be open to the public, that wouldn't be open to each of you, that you wouldn't actually vote on at a meeting in the future, okay? Along the way, you have my word that I will stay in close contact with every single one of you about what's going on. And we all know that that we cannot conduct serial meetings, and I understand what that means, but that doesn't mean I can't have an individual discussion with each one of you to talk about the contract. And what are we offering? What does the candidate want? What are the different things? There's a number of things within that contract, and you all should have a blank ICMA contract. And Jim, have you sent your contract to everybody?
Previously,
okay. If not, Jim can. So that's what I would offer to you as a way to confirm and approve a contract. I would also say to you that part of that contract would have language in there that involved an annual review. and that has not been a big part of Auburn's culture. That was the decisions that were made by the leadership at that point in time. But I believe going forward, it's important for us to do an annual review. One potential way to do that is to do that around the budget each and every year, that you can kind of look at metrics that are facilitated within the budget, and you can look at how we've done. Certainly there would be other criteria in there. We would have to discuss as a council what kind of things we would want to do on a review. But I would say to all of you that I would ask all of you to give your input. How would you like to see a review? What are some things you would like to include? And we'll put the best review together. But the next city manager should expect to be reviewed on an annual basis, and that would be part of their contract. And they would have to perform to our expectations. Okay. So I wanted to bring both of those up because now I believe is the time to talk about that. Is there any discussion revolving either one of those? Okay.
So Mayor, this is Beth. So
Sure.
you're recommending that we would, if there's a consensus, put this on the next council agenda, or I guess an agenda in the future, to vote on the candidate, and then would negotiate, you would then negotiate the contract, but the council would then approve the contract. Is that correct?
Yes, you got a little bit out in front of me, but yes, that's ultimately where we were headed to. I was trying to have the discussion about approving the city manager's contract has been a point of interest from a number of members of our city council. And I just wanted to make sure that we are covering this and talking about this and that everybody's on board. As Beth said, the reason for doing that, and Jim, I'll let you explain this more clearly, is that when we were to move forward, we would be looking to approve the hiring of a candidate, and part of that hiring would be there also therefore be the negotiating of the contract. I believe I can only reflect in coaches that have been hired here in Auburn over the years. It's not unusual for someone to be hired and identified and then the contract to be negotiated after the fact. Okay. Now, certainly we're not going to delay that. We would get right into getting that done as quick as possible. But you, Jim, you correct me on this, but this discussion we have, we wouldn't approve a candidate and then obviously approve a contract at the same time. Everybody understand that process? So Jim, would you like to kind of pick up what would be the next steps here?
So basically, if you all decide that, excuse me, that the internal candidate, Megan, is basically is the pick, we do need to put this on a regular meeting agenda. So I would propose that we put it on the October 20th agenda. You would have a vote. If the vote is favorable to hire Megan, as part of that resolution, it would allow the mayor to negotiate a contract with the candidate that would come back before the council, possibly at the next meeting in November, for ratification by the council.
Okay, Beth, does that answer the question? So yes, in a minute I'll poll y'all and see where we are as a council on that. But procedurally, with the steps, are we okay? Does anybody have any questions?
I just got a question.
Sure.
Now what, and maybe I've forgotten, but so what's the difference in the way it is now than what we are trying to discuss today? As far as is this a new procedure? Is this the way that it's been done, or are we getting ready to vote on something that's new? I mean, different than what it was before.
Jim, I'll let you. You're talking about in the confirmation of the contract, the approval of the contract, Connie? Is that specifically what you're asking about?
Yeah, the contract and I guess the hiring process, because I hear you saying that are you saying, and I don't want nobody to get this wrong, because I'm not, I'm not trying to argue a situation. I just want to have an understanding, okay?
Sure.
Because I noticed from some of the comments earlier, we don't need to be debating as if we arguing about something. Everybody just got their own opinion. But I'm just trying to just understand what we're saying here before I, agree to something.
Okay, so why don't I let Jim, can you reflect,
Well,
can you
well,
tell us?
let me ask the
Okay.
question first. Okay, let
Sure.
me just ask the question so I can make you understand what I'm actually asking.
Yes, ma'am.
So the mayor appoints, then we come back and we negotiate the contract. But the appointment is really just gonna be the mayor to appoint or hire the person, and then we come back and the council negotiate just the contract. So is that separate?
No, ma'am. I'm gonna let Jim answer that question, okay?
Okay.
So what, the only thing different, the council has to hire the city manager. So the hiring of the city manager would be on the next council meeting agenda. That's what you all are deciding at this work session. Do we put that on the agenda for the 20th or do we not? Because we're going to go out for a different search. But what is different is that when I was hired, the council hired me, but the mayor just negotiated my contract on his own without the council coming back and voting on that contract.
I got it.
What Mayor Andrews is saying is what would be different is that he would negotiate the contract, but it would not become binding until it was brought back to the council for their deliberation and approval.
Okay, that's understood. I just wanted clarification, that's all.
Okay. Thank you, Connie, for the question. All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Hey, when you first started this Zoom session, you said that the purpose of the meeting was to determine if we're do internal or external. And now we're talking about bringing a candidate by name up to the council. So I'm not sure that we have gotten to that point yet. I think it's a decision, should we go internal, external, or not do any search whatsoever. I think that's the decision to be made today, unless I misheard what your purpose of the meeting was. I'm not sure we're ready to go forward with the council meeting, say, okay, we're going to pick one particular candidate. I thought the method of how we're going to select her was what we were supposed to be discussing.
That's certainly open for the council to continue to discuss that. Kelly, based on what I have heard from the council is that there is, and from what we've heard from the city manager, is that if we were to go the internal route, that there is one candidate internally, and that is Ms. Crouch. So if we were to say today that we're going to move forward with an internal search, we're saying that it's Megan. There's no question about that. I think that's become very clear in the conversations.
Because we haven't announced it. We haven't given anyone an opportunity.
If the council would like to do that, then certainly it's the council's prerogative
Just
to do
because nobody responded to Jim's email saying he was retiring doesn't mean there's not somebody else. And it's fine. I just is to determine the method that we're going to use.
Is that his? Kelly, we're not hearing anything you're saying right now.
Not necessarily to determine the candidate at this point. Maybe
Mr. Griswold, we're not hearing what you're saying. You're frozen on the screen and we're not able to hear anything you're saying.
Kelly, it would be a good idea probably to no.
I'm not muted on this end.
I think you don't have enough bandwidth, so I think just turning off your video would allow your audio to be better.
Okay, how's that? Does that help?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I said we don't know for certain that there is not an internal candidate because just the fact that no one replied to your announcement on retiring doesn't necessarily imply that no one's interested. And I just don't think there's any not a downside to saying, hey, we want to announce this internally. And you may or may not get a reply. There may be a department head out there somewhere that thinks that they are very qualified to compete. But again, if I just want to know what we're doing today as far as this meeting. I thought it was to determine our procedure, not to determine a candidate.
Anyone else?
Jim, can it not have a dual purpose, this meeting? So if we have a consensus from this body that we agree that an internal candidate process, internal search, whatever term you want to call it, the search can be limited to one, is the path of which we go, then in the second polling of this body, could we not indicate our desire to move forward with a specific candidate to be then placed on a future agenda?
Yes.
Any follow-up to that, Ms. Wooten? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? So Jim, once again, it's been almost 2 weeks since you made your announcement. No one has come to you and said that they'd be interested in this job. And it's your professional opinion, being the manager and the leader of these employees for 3 years now, based on the qualifications, that Megan is the lone candidate that is currently an employee of the city of Auburn.
So, yes, let me go back and reiterate what I said. And to Councilman Griswold's point, and I did say that when I was answering the question, just because no one came to me doesn't mean that they may not have a desire. However, I think it is very, given knowing the culture of this organization, I think that because no one came to me and said, hey, I'm interested, what do I have to do? Whether it's because they know that there is a candidate that I am supporting, that they may not have come forward. But I don't believe, given that scenario, I don't believe that if you did open it up, that you would get a candidate from internally. Not only because I think they would self-evaluate and determine that based on the qualifications, they don't have them, but also from the standpoint that as I expect them to do in their departments, I have done in mine, which I have developed a candidate to take my place. And internally, that's what we do. That's what each of our department heads do, is try to develop someone in their sphere that can take their place when they leave for whatever reason. So I think from a cultural perspective internally, we all understand that, and I'm not sure what you would gain by opening it up internally to the rest of the staff. But as has been said, that's clearly your prerogative. But I have worked with these people for, many of them for the entire 25 years that I've been here. And from a managed perspective, where I've been either assistant or city manager, it's been a little over 13, almost 14 years in that capacity. So I kind of got a handle on the culture of the organization, and I'm not sure what you would gain by opening it up to the rest of the staff.
All right. So it's 1:15. I'm sure some of you need to get back to work. So I would like to offer this as a pathway for us to take. That we have on the next city council agenda a resolution. Jim, would that be a resolution? A resolution to name Megan McGowan Crouch the next city manager of Auburn, I guess effective February the 1st of 2021, right, Jim? And that there be pertinent language in there about how the contract would be handled, negotiated, and approved by the city council. Okay. So what I need now from the council is That is a suggestion and a path forward. I need to know right now, what are your thoughts on that? Don't necessarily need to do this, I guess, by roll call. So I'm gonna just ask as I see your name on the screen to please give me an answer, yes or no, on that pathway, okay? All right. Ms. Whitten?
I concur.
Okay. Mr. Hovey?
As do I.
Okay. Mr. Dawson?
I concur.
Okay. Mr. Griswold?
I can't go forward without some kind of a competitive search, so I don't agree with that path forward.
Okay. Mr. Parsons?
I'm always one for democracy. Megan is an excellent candidate, and I'm good with it.
Mr. Dixon?
I'm good with moving forward.
Okay. Ms. Taylor?
I'm gonna decline.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's 7 in affirmative and 2 to decline. So this will be on our next council meeting, which is next Tuesday, and it'll be on in our work session on Friday. Okay. All right. All right. I thank everybody for your time today. Thank you for the open and honest discussion. Every one of you brought something to the table today, and I appreciate that. Y'all have a good rest of the day. We'll talk to you on Friday.
Thank you. Bye.